He's just a useless son. My parents said it in court. I stayed silent. The judge asked their attorney, "Do you really not know who he is?" The attorney froze. My parents' faces went pale. "He's just a useless son. He's never amounted to anything. Your Honor, we shouldn't be held responsible for his failures." My mother said the words without even looking at me. She sat at the plaintiff's table, dabbing her dry eyes with a tissue, playing the victim perfectly. Next to her, my father nodded in solemn agreement, adjusting his designer tie. I sat alone at the defense table. I didn't flinch. I didn't defend myself. I just stayed perfectly silent, watching them lie under oath. For 28 years, this was my role in the family. I was the scapegoat. My older brother, David, was the golden child, the one who got the private tutors, the new cars, the down payment for his house. I was the mistake they stopped paying attention to the day I turned 18. They kicked me out with nothing but a garbage bag of clothes, telling me I would end up in the gutter. I didn't. I spent the next decade working 100-hour weeks. I started in a warehouse, taught myself coding at night, and eventually built a logistics software company. I lived out of my car for a year to fund it. When it took off, I didn't buy flashy cars or designer clothes. I reinvested. I built an empire in absolute silence. To my family, who I only saw at awkward Thanksgiving dinners, I was still just a low-level data entry clerk struggling to get by. I let them believe it. It was easier than dealing with their greed. But 3 years ago, my father made a massive gamble. He took out a high-interest commercial loan against their lavish estate to fund David's failing startup. When David inevitably tanked the business and fled the country, my parents were left holding the bag. They defaulted. The property went into foreclosure. That's why we were in court. My parents had filed a desperate lawsuit, attempting a legal maneuver to shift their crushing debt onto me under an obscure filial responsibility law. They were telling the judge that I was a financial dependent who had secretly drained their accounts and that the ruthless private equity firm buying up their debt was acting illegally. Their attorney, a slick, overpriced shark named Harrison, stood up. "Your Honor," Harrison said smoothly, "my clients are victims of predatory lending by a faceless corporation, Obsidian Holdings. Furthermore, they have been financially bled dry by this young man here. He is a useless son who has contributed nothing to this family. We ask the court to compel him to assume a portion of the liability, and we request an injunction against Obsidian Holdings to halt the eviction." The judge, a stern man in his 60s, stared at Harrison. Then he looked down at the massive stack of corporate filings I had submitted into evidence. The courtroom was dead quiet. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning. The judge slowly took off his glasses. He looked from the documents to my parents, and then locked eyes with their smug attorney. "Mr. Harrison," the judge said, his voice dangerously low, "did you review the ownership structures of Obsidian Holdings before filing this motion?" Harrison blinked, caught off guard. "Your Honor, it's a standard private equity firm. The CEO is a shadow entity. We've subpoenaed their legal department." "I'm going to ask you one more time," the judge interrupted, leaning over the bench. He pointed a finger directly at me. "Do you really not know who he is?" Harrison froze. My parents looked confused. My father scoffed. "He's a nobody, Your Honor. He works in a cubicle." The judge ignored my father. He picked up a document bearing the official state seal and held it up. "The defendant sitting across from you," the judge said, his voice echoing in the silent room, "is the sole founder, majority shareholder, and acting CEO of Obsidian Holdings. The faceless corporation you are suing is him. He is the one who bought your debt." The blood drained from my mother's face instantly. She looked like she had been struck by lightning. My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He slowly turned his head to look at me, his eyes wide with a sudden horrifying realization. Harrison's legal pad slipped from his hands and hit the floor with a loud smack. He stared at me, his jaw completely slack, realizing he had just spent 20 minutes insulting the man who legally owned everything his clients possessed. I finally leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. I looked directly into my mother's terrified eyes, and then at my father. "They're right about one thing, Your Honor," I said, my voice cold, calm, and perfectly steady. "I won't be contributing to this family anymore. I'm foreclosing." The judge dismissed their case with prejudice 10 minutes later. As I walked out of the courtroom, my parents were frantically screaming my name, begging me to wait, begging for a second chance. I didn't even look back. It's just a